Good afternoon again, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today, presented by SCS Global Services on topic that's quite of interest to me and to others, and obviously to you for joining. So thank you for joining us today. A couple of housekeeping items before we get going on the presentation. So everybody is in listen mode only, except for obviously myself and the panelists. So you can't any questions that you have, please put them into the question box in the, there's a question box in the chat box, put them into the question box, and we will be taking them up if they're pertinent to the discussion at the time. We will take them up then, else we will leave it to the end and take some up. So really encourage you, as questions come up that you're thinking about, put them into the question box, please. If we don't get through all the questions, if there's some in there, we will get back to you individually and provide answers to that based on either myself or the panelists. The FYI, the webinar is being recorded, and we'll be emailing you the webinar recording tomorrow. So that you'll get that. That'll obviously include the slide deck and any of the information that you're looking on the slide deck. The slide deck is minimum. This is intended to be a more of a panel discussion with our participants. So again, without further ado, let's get started. So again, this is about SQF in the modern age being now, obviously, and a lot of changes going on in indoor and outdoor plant production and primary plant production in general. So SQF has some really good solutions for that, some really good codes and codes of practice. Obviously, and a food safety management solution that can be applicable to any particular site that's growing product or packaging product. That includes both, obviously, the indoor and outdoor plant production and packing houses. So, so glad to have you here. So, so this is who's going to be on the call. If we can just ask everybody to kind of pop in and say hi. So we have myself. Hi, I'm Frank Schurz. Director of Strategic Accounts for SCS Global, going to be here. We're going to let Leanne and Adam introduce themselves further later on, but if they just want to say hi, they're around. You know that?
Hello, everybody.
Wave their hands. Yeah. All right, great. Good to have you guys, and look forward to our conversation. So we'll get you back on the screen in a couple minutes. So that's us. So pleased to be here, and pleased to walk you guys through some of these presentation materials at the start, not a little bit, and then dive into some conversation and questions with Leanne and Adam. I'm particularly keen to get obviously their take on some of the things going on in indoor ag and plant production in general. So if you're not familiar with SCS, just a little bit of a background. We really have 4 decades of leadership in sustainability and food safety. Cut our teeth really early on with pesticide-free applications. So we've been in indoor ag and outdoor ag production and on farms for a long time, and it's still a very strong service provision for us. So we're obviously headquartered in the U.S. It's our strength is the U.S., but quite a good service provision in Canada and Mexico, and you'll see some other global places there where other services are in sustainability, social compliance, and environmental climate services as well, which are growing rapidly due to a lot of the changes there. But we're here to talk about food safety, particularly, and SQF code. So there's just a little bit of a take on our number of certifications we had and clients we have in all the major markets. So I think that's important when you're looking at a service provider that can meet your specific needs, whatever they might be. So we're glad to be able to be here for you or to guide you appropriately. So a list of some of the food safety audits that we're doing, the food labeling that we're doing in terms of gluten-free, non-GMO, or our big ones, organic as well, and pesticide-free, like we started before. And then our sustainable agriculture, sustainably grown is our own standard. It's getting a lot of movement these days, as is SMETA, the social compliance audits, fair trade, and the Equitable Food Institute initiative as well, which is relatively new in that space. So trying to keep a good list of those types of standards and programs that are needed out there. And obviously, as we start talking about the management system approach and the management system framework that SQF has, it's obvious, and it can be obvious, and maybe this is where the efficiencies come in, where we can start blending in food safety with social compliance and sustainability and labeling. Obviously, labeling is a compliance aspect and needed within food safety programs. But there's definitely overlap between them. So let's maybe keep that in the background in terms of how to look at SQF and your management systems and how they can all work together to be efficient and effective, which is what we want. So today, specifically, what we want to talk about is obviously the SQF solution and their primary plant production code, edition 9, which was revamped and brought out so over a year ago now, I believe. That was May 2021. So we have Leanne Chaba from SQF here to talk about the code and the application of the code, the feedback that they're getting from industry around the code, so some discussion around that. And we have Adam from Brights Farms, who's a vertical farms in the indoor ag space, and can talk specifically about how they are applying and have applied SQF edition 9 and the new indoor ag module. And I look forward to hearing from Adam in terms of some of the things that are working, maybe some things that aren't working well. And also, as I'm discussing and asking questions of Leanne and Adam, I've got some auditor perspectives. I've interviewed a couple of auditors and some CBs to get some feedback on how they are looking at the new production code. So, and some of the pros and cons that they see, the ways that they see that's helping them and helping them with the audits and certification provision with their sites. So got a little bit of all those three coming together so that it can provide you with, what you've experienced, what you can expect, how can you get better at what you do and more efficient at meeting the needs of your customers and obviously the compliance aspect as it relates to both SQF, other codes perhaps, as well as regulation, because that's in there as well. So, okay, so if we can get Adam and Leanne back on there, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Sorry, I'm on. Let me see about getting this in place. Okay, so welcome back, guys.
Thank you.
So why don't you guys know yourselves better than I know you, although I don't know. We've been on a few Johns, haven't we, Leanne? I could probably have some stories, but I won't go into them right now.
Thank you.
So why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself and SQF for those that are new to SQF.
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Leanne Chuboff. I'm the Vice President of Technical Affairs at SQF. So I'm responsible for the code requirements, auditor requirements, CB requirements, and of all of SQF. So anything non-information technology. So it's not technical support like that, but technical science. And that's my overview of what I do. So I'm happy to be on this webinar. Primary has always been a strong part of SQF. In fact, that's how SQF was founded in Australia, was on the primary standard. So we're excited to showcase what we've done with the primary code. And I do divert probably to Frank for most of my questions because he's the one that was responsible for developing most of the primary code. So he's a great resource, not just to SQF, but to you all as well. So thank you very much, Frank and SCS, for putting together this webinar and including me on it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Leanne. Okay, Adam, go ahead.
All righty, thank you. So good afternoon, good morning, everybody, wherever you're at in the country. It's really a pleasure for me to be here today and to represent Bright Farms and kind of share a little bit about our food safety program with SQF and Edition 9. And thank you to the SES Global team for putting this together. So my name is Adam Mafrakis. I'm the food safety manager with Bright Farms. So we're a CEA hydroponic greenhouse operation. We operate about 6 greenhouses in the East Coast and the upper Midwest. And our facilities range from about 1 acre to 6 acres in size. And we're using both a gutter style or an NFT and a deep water culture hydroponic growing system. And so I've been with the company for about a year. I come from working with the Missouri Department of Agriculture as a produce safety inspector and quality manager. So got into the industry a little over a year ago, and so SQF is a little bit new to me. I'm a little more familiar with Primus and USDA harmonized GAP, just as some of the auditing schemes that we use in the area that I'm from, and so SQF is a little bit new to me. However, I've gotten to go through several audits now, and Bright Farms has been under SQF for a few years, and so I've kind of have this, I guess, middle ground of it being somewhat new, but also transitioning into our company as well. So I'm really excited to be here and have this discussion and share the perspective and input from Bright Farms as an industry perspective. So thank you.
Yeah, great. Well, good to have you, Adam. And obviously you mentioned you specifically for Bright Farms, they've seen the transition over probably a couple of editions now. Mm-hmm. Not that editions don't come out that often, do they, Leanne? Really, not that often.
Well, I can stop the rumor now. There's not going to be an edition 10 this year or next. So
there you go. A little reprieve.
One of the top questions is, when's there going to be an edition 10? And we haven't planned for one. So it takes about 18 months to create a brand new edition. So I'm going to say not this year or next.
There you go. Take a breath, everybody. It's okay. Yeah. So the opportunity now is to make what you got better. And if you're new, and if some of you are on the call, on the webinar that are new, then it's a fresh start. You only know about Edition 9, but so you'll be able to gain some insight from Adam and Leanne and some of the feedback I got from auditors in terms of what's working, what's not, what to expect. So that's part and parcel of what we're trying to do here today as well. Okay, so questions. Let's start with you, Leanne. When you look at the primary production code, what are some of the features of that code in general that make it a great fit for growers, either indoor or outdoor? And let's not forget about the packing house guys and gals, because that's an important module in plant production as well. So what are some of the features that make, or you perceived making that work well for them?
So from my perspective, it's really the I don't want to say customization, but the buckets that we have with industry scopes. So we've outlined indoor ag, we have primary, we have, hold on, I pulled them up. We have indoor ag, we have growing of produce, then we have pack houses, and then we have broadacre crops. So within that code, there are 4 really industry scopes that are within that code. So it makes it unique where we just don't have a grower that's going to just, like indoor ag, it doesn't have to apply to everything. Because before, with edition 8 and previous editions, we had to combine different modules together to try and accommodate when one was indoor ag. So we were like, is this a pack house? Is this, So what we did is we siloed and we provided a unique food safety code for each of those industry scopes. And then what we did also with edition 9, and I know for some of you that are new or some of you that were previous, we put it all into one code. So before, pack houses was included into the post farm, and now we put it all into this primary code. So it's easier to have a certificate solution if you're a grower, packer, shipper versus just one piecemeal solution with different pieces of the SQF code. So for me, that's the best aspect, is that we really have a solution no matter what your industry scope is. And then I think it's the enhancements that we made to the code. And I know I divert to Frank because he's the one that really was the instrumental in doing this, but water enhancements as well as requirements of the practitioner have been modified to accommodate the regulatory requirements and everything. So I think for us, we spoke to the risks of the industry and not just have one big code that is generic for everybody. So that's my perspective from what I believe is one of the enhancements of what we've done with our primary code.
Yeah, let me speak that, and you talked about risk and the specificity to the growers. I mean, any industry sector always wants the code and the compliance practice to be all about them. It's all about them, and them means, you know, even specific wording and things that because it's more meaningful and it's easier for them to articulate that and train staff up on all those sorts of things. So part of those changes is just as simple as language and clarifying language a little bit more. But the risk part comes from, you know, with every code change, you're always trying to, you know, address what's new. The science, obviously, it's new, but also what we're learning from recalls and greater risk in there. And so, well, obviously, water was one with a lot of the ongoing risks in there, and we've seen just in the, you know, Adam, you're probably well aware of this. Like in the last 6 months, there's been a recall at indoor ag for you know, biological, pathogenic in nature. So, you know, indoor ag and any of them, they while it's each application of the modules are unique to the growing, they are also unique to the risks that they're trying to manage. And that's, if the code's built to that, I think that goes a long way to helping the sites understand that and obviously, you know, manage it, because that's their responsibility. So.
And just to add on to that, Frank, one more thing is, so SQF is a division of the Food Industry Association, which is an association that represents food retailers, you know, Publix, Walmart, Kroger, they're all members of FMI, and SQF is a division of that. So we hear from our retail members what they want, you know, so we're first in line to see this is, you know, some of the enhancements that we want. And when we pulled out indoor ag, that was one of the things that was mentioned by the retailers as a good approach that SQF did. So they want to see, because it does, then the audit report, then the I don't want to say non-conformancies, assuming everybody's good, but then the responses to the audit report speak more to that industry scope, and it's more visible to the retailer when they're reviewing an audit report. So to the retailers, that also is a good addition to what we've done to SQF. I just wanted to bring that up as well.
Yeah, no, they're ultimately a reader of the report, as is other people. So it's important that you get the feedback in that. Okay, so Adam, so how, you know, you said you've been on a couple audits, you've got 6 sites there. You know, I'm assuming most of them were transitioning from Edition 8 to Edition 9. What's been the feedback from the sites in terms of the indoor ag now having its own module? For the benefit of those, it's module 18. It's just a number, but it does make it distinctive from other modules. So that's the indoor ag module, specific for indoor ag growing. What has that meant to the sites in terms of ongoing maintenance, implementation, that sort of stuff?
Sure. And I guess give a little bit of background. So Bright Farms, you know, one of our company mission, and it's something that I really appreciate about this company, is that the company, you know, lives and breathes the food safety as a #1 priority every single day. And so that's from not just the food safety, it's not siloed in the food safety department, it's through sales, it's through the operations team. And, you know, our mission is really to provide the greenest, the cleanest, safest product out there to our consumers. And so I think that kind of speaks to the food safety culture, and that makes a huge difference when we're talking about audits and SQF. And something that's, I think, really unique that I've seen at Bright Farms is when it comes to these changes, when it comes to these transitions, you know, every level of the organization I see embraces it. You know, once they understand, you know, what the why to a certain change, or an addition or an update, you know, it's embraced, it's implemented. And so I think from our experience from transitioning from 8.1 to 9, you know, I think there were some challenges, there were some things that maybe were new to us. You know, maybe it was like ambient air or just the breakup of module 18 and the specific requirements. But in terms of just the transition itself, I think it made a lot of sense to people, and it made a lot of sense to the management teams. And so for us, I think it went fairly well in terms of working towards you know, changing our food safety plan, to updating and revising any of our policies. And you know, I'm sure later we'll get into more of the specifics of it, but I think overall, kind of like what Leanne was saying, when you address the questions of the audit or the checklist or the specific requirements in the code, you know, specifically make mention or address, you know, the facility design or different components of indoor agriculture, it just tends to resonate more and make more sense to you know, not only the food safety department, but also the management team and supervisors who are ultimately in charge of, you know, implementing these policies and practices. And so I think that specificity, you know, it gives a better direction, gives better guidance. And then also I think, oh, I just lost my train of thought here. No, maybe it'll come back to me. But I guess the big take home for us was just that specificity really, I guess, resonated and really connected to helping explain the why to these things. So maybe then my other thought will come back, and I'll mention it later.
Yeah, no problem. I'll poke and prod you for that at some point. It might make sense to you. But I love what you said about food safety culture, because those were add-on changes, not add-on, just some requirement add-ons and differences that came into edition 9, but they were common across all of the codes and all of the different sectors. But what that allows you to do, because I like to, you know, you mentioned that what the module specific for indoor ag does is it has the practices in it that manifest food safety culture. You define it, how you monitored all the stuff in the management system, the modules, and you have to do that. But you know, how that plays out with your staff would be in the training and the execution that's happening. That's evaluated in the module 18, specifically around, you know, what are staff doing and some of the production practices and those sorts of things. So you can get really specific in that module 18 on that. So I like that. Absolutely. That mention of culture there. I'm sure, Leanne, you like that too, because it's important. It's hard to measure, but I think the metrics can be in some of those aspects of the individual modules, whether it's indoor agriculture, packing house, or even in the field, because they're different in terms of how they're executed, but you can evaluate them differently, or the auditor can, and you can too from an internal audit perspective. So
yeah. And now it's measurable, you know, it's not just measurable, but auditable, and then able to be tracked and trend. I think that's kind of where we're looking at it, because I feel like we always had that in our code. Aspects of food safety culture, just wasn't named as such. So
yeah, I mean, you know, if I remember it was like 3 or 4 sections brought in about 4 or 5 different requirements, all in the food safety culture, which speaks to the changes in the code and the consolidation and movement of some things around to make them or create them into kind of buckets. I think that's the term you used earlier, Leanne, was your buckets of things. It's that buckets that, you know, I can segue now into the auditor, because the auditor's coming in to look at, you know, evaluate how good your system is, right? How rigorous it is to either eliminate or prevent, you know, food safety aspects. And so when you've got those buckets, and that's one of the things, one of the auditors feedback that I got was, if everything around that risk is in one bucket, I'm not jumping around, I being the auditor, I'm not jumping around from different codes or even different modules like it was in edition 9, which you can miss some things, and there's not a good systemic, we always use that term in terms of auditor competency around the systemic aspect of looking at a food safety culture, so you can see how things are linked and possible root causes that could lead to a food safety issue. So that those buckets being together, whether it's, you know, everything about, you know, personal hygiene in one rather than in a couple different things, and water being one. And Madam, you mentioned, you know, equipment design. Well, equipment design and what you're looking for in a greenhouse or a vertical farm is a lot different than in the field. I mean, some of the things are different, but the application totally different in terms of what's expected of those sorts of things. So those buckets. So the feedback, yes, and the auditors is one of the terms they heard was it fits better. So the reconstruction and specificity in SQF indoor ag and some of the changes made to packing houses and in outdoor ag is that it fits the application better, and hence it provides a better and more efficient way for an auditor to evaluate that. So if they're not saying, well, that's not applicable, is that applicable? So you're making, so that fits better is something that I heard from the auditors, and that when it fits better, it allows them to make a better, fair assessment of whether it's working or not, because they're not worried about jumping around all that. And also, if they're not jumping around, then it makes it more of a systematic approach to auditing rather than a checklist approach, which, some companies like that checklist because it's very, I know what I'm getting. Here's my SQF. The auditor likes it, but in essence, it's, Leanne, you comment on it. It's not a very appropriate way to assess the food safety practices and the way that they're all linked together on a farm.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I mean, that's what we're trying to. That's what the GFSI, actually GFSI, SQF, they're all that way. SQF, it's about evaluating the site's commitment to doing the right thing, in my opinion. It's not just looking to see that they did it right that day, but it's looking to see that they have the means, the competencies, the commitment to do it right every day. And that's the difference between just a simple inspection or an audit, a capture, a moment in time. What SQF is trying to convey is that they are evaluating those moments and what that commitment is to the site. That's what food safety culture is about.
Yeah. So yeah, you want to mention something, Adam?
Yeah, I just wanted to add real quick. I think kind of going back to the question on how has this transition been seen from our farms. Anybody that's in the CEA or greenhouse or vertical farm industry knows how much has changed over the last 5-10 years. Bry Farm started in 2011. It was a small, less than I think 1 acre greenhouse, and we don't even have that facility anymore. And so every single year, our farms that we keep adding are constantly changing from not only size, but primarily in the technology and equipment that we're using inside the design, the cooling systems or whatever it might be. And so, I think it's really important that, the SQF is I guess, tailoring towards, the CEA indoor, industry and asking the questions or putting the standards out there that are matching some of the hazards that are coming, are being discovered when, we change in technology and we change in operation. Right now, we're building new facilities and some of these equipment and things that we're using are different than what we're used to. And so we're having to go back to kind of think about, okay, is this a potential hazard or this is something that's new to us? And so, what do we need to do to put the, preventative and, preventative measures in place? And I think, having the SQF that adopts and changes to recognize that the industry is changing is really important. Otherwise, we'd be stuck with, maybe a code that one is not relevant to us or kind of back to you guys' point about maybe potentially missing different hazards and things, and not truly evaluating the whole system, like Leanne was mentioning, or the whole food safety health, for lack of a better term, of a facility, and just kind of, losing because of the ambiguity of the language or something like that. So.
Yeah, I thank you for saying that, because we go back, we joke about new additions, we joke about edition 10, or there's going to be a 9.1, but it's not just GFSI that's going to dictate when we release a new edition. If there's an emerging concern, if there is a practice that needs to be included within the code, we have no hesitancy to update our code to address those emerging issues. Or if there's a concern that needs to be interpreted or training or whatever, we have no hesitancy to address that. And I think the flexibility that we have and the commitment is equal to what we expect of all of our certificates. That food safety commitment is equal to what we expect of all our certificate holders, and we want to be the leader in that space as well. So I'm proud that Bright Farms is one of our certificate holders, because we have the same expectations, and I think that is fantastic.
Absolutely.
I think that speed, the speed that you mentioned, Leanne, the speed of that you can implement that change is critical, I think, because the industry, as we all know now, is just like it's different now than it was in January. It seems like everything's changing so quickly with change, like supply chain issues, even getting equipment. You may start to make some compromise, and you don't want that compromise to have an issue on food safety, because you can't compromise on that. You might compromise on throughput and other types of things, but you can't compromise on that. So you have a good system built up, and you're not recreating the wheel. You're not slowing things down. You're going to say, yeah, when somebody comes and says to you, Adam, hey, we wanted that new piece of equipment for that new for our new site there, but it can't do this and this and this. So they're redesigning like this. Is that an issue? They're coming to you before you get it and it's installed, and they're saying, this isn't going to work for us.
Yeah, that mindset, absolutely.
Yeah, and again, because of that, but I don't want to say that there's only mechanization and change in indoor ag. We're seeing it in outdoor ag with all the labor issues and things going on, and trying to get production up to feed the world. That rate of change that's happening within codes of practice like SQF, and then implemented at the site level, is critical to staying ahead of a problem before it is. So so the framework that I'm hearing from both of you is that the framework of SQF allows for sites to take on that change and manifest that in their practices. And that's what auditors are coming in and say, well, because when I was an auditor years ago, the first thing I would do, first opening meeting, is I just want to know what's changed. First question. So what's changed between last time I was here or somebody else was here? And typically, if the answer is nothing, then my spidey senses would go up and say, it's food industry. There's always change. And it's how they manage that change that can give you confidence or lack thereof of whether they know what's going on, whether it's a code change or just a change in nature. So Leanne, let's just look. I'm going to go back to like features of the code and the aspects and the nice fit that is for the industry. And I'm talking about all primary plant production here. So how does SQ at the grower packer level? How does a similar code improve, or from your perspective, supply chain efficiencies? Where are some of the things that SQF's done to assist with that? Because we all hear about that now. Supply chain's done, but we want to improve efficiencies. When you're talking the same code or the same type of practice or the same framework up and down the chain, either direct supplier to customer or even a couple ones, how does that improve that efficiency, whatever those metrics might be? What do you guys?
Right. Well, I think it all depends on what you want to define as efficiencies. And maybe if I'm understanding the question correctly, I think because SQF is a farm to fork solution, because we have a solution at each stage of the supply chain, we use common language along each of our codes so that there creates the efficiency in just understanding the code requirements. So if you're a grower, if you're a pack house, if you're a processor or storage and distribution, a distributor or retailer or whatever, there's that common language that's used across. So it does create efficiencies because we have the ability at SQF to blend modules and create a certificate solution for anybody at the stage of the supply chain. So I think there creates those efficiencies just simply because if you're a bigger grower or pack house, you can use the code for multiple solutions, and it is an easy way to blend those codes together. So for me, that's how I'm looking at them. If maybe I misunderstood the question, but that to me would be the efficiency that I see.
Yeah, that's one way. Adam, do you see any benefits to having a similar, framework of a management system? I mean, food safety risk, that's why they have GFSI benchmarking. They're, that's a pretty common global platform, but obviously the nuances and differences play out in the different programs that, you mentioned a couple other ones that are similar to GFSI benchmark like Primus and Global Gap. Do you see that in the supply chain that you interact with? Because obviously you have to have a supplier program for your things. Is there anything you see where the SQF code and being like a gate to plate or farm to fork solution? Are there other efficiencies that you might see beneficial that you know of?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think for us, a lot of the we're growing everything and shipping it out to the customer directly. So we control a lot of the steps in the process. But we do have obviously, the inputs and suppliers. And I think just, I'm not sure if this is really answering your question or not, but, a lot of the facilities, they're SQF or GFSI benchmarks. And so we're kind of all speaking the same language and understanding what's required and what's needed. And, maybe understanding the different hazards from the suppliers and they get able to communicate as that to us as well, since we're all kind of in the same framework. And so I mean I think it helps us, and I think it in some limited situations I think it makes that process easier for us.
I also think that just to add on to your response there, Adam, is if there is an emerging issue, we're able to address it across the supply chain.
Yep.
So if you just looking at some of the regs coming down, traceability reg that is coming down, as well as, the produce safety rule and the changes. So there's ability to address it along the supply chain and not just silo it, because you're the starting point. So what we need to do is start at the beginning and then modify, adjust accordingly as different emerging issues or regulations come down the pipeline. We can address that at each point of the supply chain, because there is a reaction as you move on. It's not just simply happens, oh good, that's at the produce end, and it's not, it's all going to trickle up or down, however you're looking at whichever end of the supply chain you are at. So I think that does provide some efficiencies, consistency, continuity, whatever you want to call it.
And it does, and especially we're getting into the summer months now, and so a big thing for us is the cold chain and making sure the product, coming from a hot greenhouse and getting into a pack room is, maintained at the right temperature, it's packed at the right temperature, sent out to the right temperature, loaded right, cross supplied to another greenhouse, then gets to the store and DC. Like there's so many layers, and so with cold chain, I can definitely see that, that alignment with that framework, the GFSI, the SQF framework. So. Definitely agree.
Yeah, and it brings all the players together so that you do address those concerns, issues, challenges, whatever you want to call them, as it relates to the perspective of the supply of wherever you are at that supply chain.
Yeah. Some other efficiencies that I've seen with with having more of the supply chain in SQF, and isn't talking up SQF here and efficiencies because it has implications in terms of business. Obviously, you have the codes of practice for warehouses and some of the other players in the supply chain. You also have the multi-site program, that not multiple site, but multi-site that a lot of the growers and packers are using to gain efficiencies there. That's a good one. Corporate, you could have corporate audits. So you could, Adam, you could have a corporate audit by your CB that addresses all those management system aspects of the corporate, and then you could, reduce the amount of time that the auditor spends on each of the sites because you've dealt with the corporate audit, and then you can apply it there. So there's savings there because you're all talking the same language. And then, the one that's, it speaks to, Leanne, what you mentioned, the language thing. So when you're using the same language, a lot of the issues that might crop up, whether it's a traceability or recall issue, is poor communication. So if you're using the same language and the expectations, that's got to improve the communication. It's got to improve the efficiencies of what you might be dealing with, whether it's a crisis or some kind of crisis management, because you have a lot of climate issues going on. That's a crisis, and that's why you have a crisis management plan in place. More and more of the retailers and restaurants, they want to know that you have that plan because they want to know what you're going to do or what they have to do to replace that. And so that talking, that communication, that definitely helps with all that. So Adam, specific question for you, Adam, around SQF and resources. So they've got, and I've got a slide at the end that I'll show everybody in terms of, where you can find the SQF resources if you don't already. They got checklists, they've got training, they've got, blogs and, other things on YouTube channels, all sorts of things tools there. How have you been able to, which ones are the best ones? Which ones do you guys use? What have you seen around the resources of SQF that come into helping you manage your systems?
Yeah, sure. And so I guess I'll kind of speak more from my own personal experience rather than kind of maybe what other Bright Farm employees were using or doing before when developing our programs. But for me personally, when I coming into SQF, and again, I'm not kind of sure where the audience is. If some of the audience is familiar with SQF or it's new to them or they've been using it for several years. But personally, I've kind of used a little bit of each of the resources. I've done some of their, online virtual training for like internal audits, understanding, the scope and how to build an internal auditing team. So I've used some of their courses. I personally really found helpful the tip sheets and the guidance documents. And so I think it does a pretty good job. I think there's some topics that would be nice to see, maybe developed in the future, but it does, I think, cover most of the components of the SQF modules that you need. And so for me, I helped do some revisions and updates to our food safety policy manual and our food safety plans, and just going into the guidance documents. I like how it breaks it up into first the definition. So just kind of understanding what this program is. If you've never heard of an approved supplier program before, or your former auditing scheme never had an environmental monitoring program. Now the stuff is new, and a lot of that stuff was new to me. And so starting with the basic definition, and then I think the next part of the guidance document talks about the why part. And I kind of going back to what I said in the beginning, the understanding the why for implementing a new component to a module really makes all the difference in how something is executed. If it's executed with just like, oh man, I have to do it, or if it's executed because yes, this makes sense, we're reducing a risk, we're keeping our product safe. And then I think in the last part of the guidance document, it gives you the I think like the roadmap to the audit. So it talks about like the records, what to look for in an interview, and then what to look for in terms of observations to make sure that whatever component or program is being implemented. So I really felt like that was a good start. They're not technical, white papers or data sheets or anything like that to really tell you, hey, like this is the threshold for your environmental monitoring. This is how many samples you need to take. Nothing like that. But it does give you a good basis for what is the code asking for, what's the background, what the intention is. And then that, gives you into a right trajectory into, getting, third party or, consultants or other information out there. So I'd say those were really helpful. And then always a checklist. I like checklists for whether I organize, how I organize things. And so when we're, revising the manual and revising our, food safety plan, having that checklist available to just kind of break it down and know how to, break up your policy manual by different sections or to match the SQF system, or to use it as a numbering or technique for like your document control program, things like that. So yeah, lots of great resources out there. And last thing I'll say about it is the videos and webinars. So, if you really want to get a good understanding of, where things have come, all the conversations that have happened, to, getting us to where we are today, just going through some of those videos just to get a good understanding of the types of conversations that people have had to lead us to where we are. Those are available, and there's hours and hours of them. So
I think that's, thanks so much for that, because I know, and Leanne's smiling because they put a lot of effort into those resources and a lot of input to try to, number one, not just trying to understand the different learning modalities that are out there for everybody. Some people just, I want to watch a video. Some people like to read. Some people just like to listen, some combination thereof. So I think there's a little bit of all of that so that you can find the right mix rather than trying to just say one solution and that. What's your take on that, Leanne, in terms of feedback you've got on some of the changes you made to resources? Which ones are most popular, which in terms of a new site versus an existing site? Any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I appreciate you, Adam, for setting this all up, because Frank's right. I mean, he was part of the process when he was with SQF as to developing our guidance documents and being more topic specific, less just a march through the code, So before the guidance document that's still on the website is still relevant as it relates to previous codes. It's not like you can't, go back and use that guidance. However, what we wanted to do was create guidance that was topic specific to address emerging. So we had the ability to address emerging topics. So when we had to address medical screening, for example, we were able to just create a guidance document on medical screening or health screening. And so that was the nice part of what we did is to do that topic specific. And we are moving forward to creating more primary code guidance documents and address the primary industry, because we realize there are some shared topics like food safety culture or whatever it might be, but not specific like application of agricultural chemicals or water, soil amendment or whatever it might be. So we do need to become more topic specific as it relates to other industry scopes. So we're working on that. And then of course our online training, we're really happy to see where we're going with our online training. We're creating a library of shorter courses. Again, not just creating one big course with a march through the code that, is perhaps maybe 1/8 relevant to that individual. Instead, we thought topic specific to marry up with the guidance documents and provide additional information and support. So we do try and do everything together, and then our webinars, and of course our conference has a lot of information. And then again, I go back to our partners, us being part of the food industry associations and the resources we have at the Food Industry Association as it relates to our regulatory affairs, as well as our retail food safety team, because I'm not sure if you just recently heard, but there is a government just came out with assistance for very small suppliers as it relates to contributing to food safety certification for primary or specialty crops. And so there's something that FMI has grabbed and said, this is going to be great for our retailers, because now we can support our retailers through education and support of this new funding available to very small businesses. So FMI and SQF are going to team up together to create resources for those entities that apply for specialty crops under very small and small businesses, and provide those resources so that they can utilize what's available to them to get some assistance and funding to food safety certification, whether it's to the certification itself or to training or wherever it might be. So I think that how we are part of FMI really does contribute to the information we can share to all of our stakeholders.
Yeah, just definitely, I got a resource slide at the end that has that link to that funding that was just announced.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to see that, and you'll get that, obviously, that in the recording that you have. So it's just a quick segue. I'm looking at our time here. We got about 5 minutes. So one more quick question, Leanne and Adam, if you want to jump in on this, is how do you deal with regulatory change in a manner that, in terms of the changes that made to the code and that sort of stuff? And we mentioned water a few times, because water, water for indoor ag is a lot different than water practices in outdoor production. And one of the CVs I was talking to was saying how the sprout industry is so happy with the indoor ag module, because it fits them. It's got the packing in there. It's got the water this is spent water, all that sort of stuff. It's got everything there. It's not a mix of growing and packing and minimal processed foods where it was before. So they like that. So in terms of the produce safety rule changes there, are you doing some tapping with that, or some other tools coming out for
Yeah, we did an indoor ag map against, or not indoor ag, sorry, primary, the food safety code under Edition 8 to the produce safety rule, and found that the biggest difference was in that water quality. And we made those changes, those applicable changes, into Edition 9. So while we haven't done a direct map lately, and we're in the process of doing that direct map, I don't see any significant differences. It might be difference in wording or specificity within the FSMA produce reg, but I don't see any significant differences. If there were, and what we've done in the past is created just an addendum that addresses or clarifies any perceived differences. So even if there is just we think it matches, but it could be interpreted either way, we do create that addendum to assist in the produce, that grower, so that they can have a little bit more guidance as it relates to what those differences would be. But yeah, I mean, I don't see any big differences. And I guess I look at Adam and Frank to see if you noticed any big differences, but I think we're a good match to that produce safety rule.
Yeah, I think it's understated a lot, but
anyways.
Yeah. Adam, what you think in terms of regulatory compliance? Because for all those listening, FDA still thinks you're still a grower if you're in a greenhouse or a indoor vertical farm or a mushroom farm or a sprout farm. You're still growing, and you're under the produce safety rules. So, what's your take on your SQF system and how well it meets regulatory compliance?
No, that question is like perfect timing for what we're going through. We just wrapped up this last couple of weeks our 6th produce safety rule inspection at all our facilities, and so it was it was interesting to see how our new Edition 9 SQF management system would correlate with that, and there was in terms of alignment, I feel like we were able to cover everything that the produce safety rule requires, and then some, obviously. And I think a lot of questions were asked that were more about SQF than what is really in the produce safety rule, which was interesting. But it really impressed and impressed inspectors, and just kind of showed that where indoor ag is heading with with this module. I will say I don't think I haven't noticed anything that's very different or like a concern where there's maybe not misalignment or anything like that. But I can see that there's multiple conversations happening, and then I hope that the alignment between the regulatory and also like SQF and SES Global that, you know, that communication continues and alignment is there, because I know there are things that are risks and hazards that, you know, they're learning about and identifying through these inspections, and having questions here that, you know, hopefully we're able to, you know, address and align with SQF as well.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks guys. We're out of time for the panelists. So hey, thanks so much for both of you being on. Really appreciate your time and your comments. I'm sure that the attendees found that as well. So bid you guys adieu, and I'm just going to finish up with a couple of slides and we'll call it a day. So take care. Have a good summer.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Take care. Okay, so just going to follow up. It's coming back. We had a couple of questions. There were one question. I'll address that offline with the person doing that. So just in terms of SES, if you're looking for, you know, obviously our certification services, we'd like to streamline and provide the audit process as being pleasant. It may not be a term that some of you would agree with, but it can happen through some advanced planning, good dedicated account management teams that are listening to your needs, some flexible scheduling. We got all your training needs, including some of the SQF one if you're looking for in-person training, and some instructor-led training. We can do that for you as well. And we're, you know, looking at bundling of services. So if you're looking for some label claims or sustainably growing or social accountability audits along with your food safety ones, there is some discounting available, so it can save you some money in your pocket. So you definitely want to ask us about that or give us a call for sure, and we can talk you through that. Here's that resource page. Here's a link to our food safety provision on our website. Here's the SQF one. It's just going to the resource center. From there, you can branch off and get to the codes of practice and other things you want. But all those tools that Adam was talking about, they're there. They're on that resource center. And then this bottom one is the new funding program that USDA is putting out there that is available for you to take a look at. I think, you know, most of the crops that are under the primary plant production are considered specialty crops. So most of that, but you'll have to check with the specific list that's available there for the on that website, and that can lead you to other websites. So I encourage you to do that if you're specifically for small and very small, and they define that based on revenue. That's right there on that sheet. So take a look. Maybe some money you can get back for this year and next year as it relates to paying for audits, paying for reassessments of your codes of practice, some consultancy work if you need it, all those sorts of things. So if you qualify, I encourage you to take a look at that. And then, so yeah, so thanks so much. Come to the end. It's 3 o'clock. So thanks so much for attending. You will get this email to you afterwards. There's my contact information. Also, Bernadette Goldstein is in our sales group as well. And you want to contact either of us if you have any questions around certification, new certification research, training, any of those sorts of things. I'll be glad to help you out. Always looking to chat with those in the industry, learn from what's going on and help you out. So thanks so much for attending, and have yourself a good day. Bye-bye.